Thank you, Stephen. Thank you. It's been a really good meeting up until now. So, um, my name's Charlie Hill. I am an alcoholic. And just to get things straight, I do have a timepiece. And what time do I shut up? That's what I'd like to know, Stephen.
Oh, you can go almost 9 o'clock.
Oh,
Eight,
that's
eight,
great. Since
eight,
it's 5 o'clock
eight.
here, this gonna be great.
Good deal.
Well, all right. Well, I said I'm Charlie Hill. I'm an alcoholic, so I got the truth out of the way. I know that part is true because I tried every way I could to prove that to be false. Um, I got to first off, thank you for asking me to come here, especially following a guy like Tom. Tom's my buddy, and he's a member of my home group. My home group is Searchlight, Nevada. It's a little tiny town of about 500 people. It's about 40 miles south of Las Vegas. It's on the way to Laughlin, and so if you haven't been anywhere, if there wasn't a reason for you to be there, you would have never been there. Let me put it that way. It's a little tiny place. And it's the kind of AA I grew up with. It's a very small town AA, where there's 15, 18 people and three of them don't like you. And, this just little small pockets. And I never was, I've always been a fan of small town AA. So and Tom's become a member of our group. And wow, I mean, and there's only 500 people in this town. So sometimes we'll have a meeting of 10 or 15 people. We had a birthday there one night. We had four guys that got 209 years of sobriety between them, a 52, a 54, a 52, and a 51. And I had a guy with me had 6 days. So he said, what do I do? I said, you're going to sit right here. And I put him right next to those guys. And he said, what do I say? And I said, well, if I were you, I wouldn't say much. Just listen. But while you're there, why don't you try to figure out which one of them still getting their court papers signed? Because we did long-term sobriety is we don't get any wings here. But Tom, I really respect Tom's sobriety. He said you guys were okay, so here I am. I've got a sponsor right now. My sponsor's name is Marty S. out of the Pacific Group. Before that, my sponsor was Clancy, and Clancy passed away. I only waited a day or two until I found somebody to be my sponsor. I don't do well without a sponsor. I have a sobriety date. It's November 19th of 1979. And for that, I'm very, very grateful. And I got sober in a very unlikely place. I got sober here in Las Vegas, Nevada. So here's what I do. First off, thank you for asking me. I just can't, I always treat this, I don't take myself very seriously, but I take this seriously because I don't ever want to give somebody that's new, welcome to the new people. I don't want to give somebody that's new the wrong impression or false impression of what Alcoholics Anonymous is or does or anything like that. And I certainly would never want to embarrass the person who asked me. So here I am, and I'm going to do my best to do that. The other thing my sponsor had me do, I don't know if he did it I don't think he did this for your benefit. I think he did it for mine. he asked me, he said, why don't you read this before you start? And I forgot, so I'll read it now. It's on page 95. It says, you will be most successful with alcoholics if you do not exhibit any passion for crusader reform. Never talk down to an alcoholic from any moral or spiritual hilltop. Simply lay out the kit of spiritual tools for his inspection. Show him how they worked with you. Offer him friendship and fellowship. Tell him if he wants to get well, you do anything to help. So I'm not an authority on Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's just what I'm going to try to do here tonight. Just tell you my story. My story's got 3 parts: what it was like and what happened, what it's like now. And so here we go. I was born in Compton, California. Which is, I don't know what we were doing there, but Compton is kind of a tough area. And from there we moved to Chino, which wasn't any better. And when I was really young, in the early 50s, we moved to Las Vegas. And my dad was a World War II guy, a truck driver, blue collar guy, very charming when he was charming. But when he wasn't, he really wasn't. He was a Jekyll and Hyde drunk. And he kept drinking up the money. He would always drink up the money. He would always couldn't come home with the paycheck. In fact, I got a check on my wall here for $68 and I put on the wall from when he was a truck driver here in Las Vegas. And my mom used to go through all these changes to get the paycheck. And he ran us out of money in Chino, evidently. And he went to his brother, who was a heroin addict and got clean in Alcoholics Anonymous in the early 50s, 1952 in Southern California. And him and my dad both went to AA. My mom insisted he go to AA so he could get back in the big bedroom. And so he went, but his brother got sober, got clean and sober, and died clean and sober, 13 years clean and sober. My dad never made it. My dad never got more than probably 90 days sober. He would come to meetings and he would come home and make fun of what he saw. He would say, "Well, old Bob got drunk and they're all tore up," and he would make clever jokes about alcoholics and things like that. But he had to he kept going. He went to thousands of meetings and he died drunk. He died on the streets and across from the Salvation Army in North Las Vegas at the age of 52. So just trying to cheer up the newcomer, just to let you know. So I don't think, when they say meeting makers make it, I'm convinced that everything in AA works a little bit. Once again, I'm not an authority. I'm just telling you what my own take on it. I think everything works a little bit. So kind of like making a cake. It's not just the eggs. There's a lot of other stuff in there. And if you leave one out, you don't have it. And that's what my dad left out. So I do a little bit of everything. I treat them all very seriously. But we wind up living in Las Vegas. Now that sounds pretty exotic. We lived in homesteads, which maybe a few of you know something about. And a homestead is just a place where you build a little shack and you build an outhouse out back. And if you live there 5 years, they give you the 5 acres around it. And most of Las Vegas was settled that way in the 50s. There was no air conditioning. And if you would live there, they would give you the land. So my uncle had this homestead and my dad went to him and asked him if he could put his family there. So there we are, 1954. I'm 6 years old. My sister and I, my mom and dad, were living in a house with no interior walls. We had blankets that we put up so we could have some privacy. We had oil lamps because we didn't have any electricity. We had no water, so we would haul water in 50-gallon drums, and we painted the hot water black, and it would get hot, let me tell you. We had ice that we would chop up, keep food cold. Boy, that outhouse was something. Something about being 6 years old and having, wanting to go, and you got to go walk out in the desert, and you're not at the top of the food chain out there. I still have memories of that. But it was a great existence. I can remember having a great time. It was wonderful. Being a 6-year-old kid living out in the desert and chasing snakes and turtles and stuff. And it was a great existence until I went to school. And then when I went to school, people pointed out that we were poor because I didn't even think about it till we went to school. And so now I'm looking around and talking to other kids, and they got things like indoor plumbing, and they got, walls, stuff like that. So I always felt less than, and I would look what people were doing, and I would try to do what they did in order for me to fit in. Now I'm going to stand up here, which I got one of these clever desks that my sweetheart got for me. And so I'm watching what you do, and I'm doing what I think I should be doing, so I'll fit in with you. And that's pretty much how I did it. I remember my dad, I never wanted to be anything like my dad, because the way my mom got that paycheck is we didn't have showers, with hot and cold water and all that stuff, with no walls. We showered outside. And on Fridays, she would take us down to this trucking company where my dad worked. And she would bring us two little tow-headed kids in there, and we would take showers in the trucker's shower because they had hot and cold water, and they had soaps and shampoos, and for us, it was a treat. But later on, I finally realized we were there on Fridays so she could get that check, because my dad couldn't very well not give her that paycheck with them two kids there. So we moved to another terrible area. We moved to Gangland in North Las Vegas, and it was just a tough area, and everybody was tough but me. It was gangs, mostly gangs, and I wasn't part of one. Everybody was tough, but I wasn't tough, and I was afraid of everybody. I was afraid of I can admit that now. I wouldn't admit it then, but I was afraid of these guys. They would look at me and give me the mad dog look, and I would believe it. If you acted tough, I bought it. I thought you were tough all the way through. So I'm always dodging these guys, and I was afraid of the girls too. They scared me. The first time I said something to one of them, they pointed and tittered and just destroyed me. So I was afraid of girls and guys. I was in junior high school when I took my first drink on purpose. So, yeah, it was at a junior high school dance, and we went there, and these guys said, listen, we're going to go out in the parking lot, have this. And so I went out with them, and they were passing around this bottle of 10 High whiskey. And it was, and I didn't want to drink because I don't want to be like my dad, but they passed it around, so I drank it. And nothing happened till the third drink, and the third drink got me. Third drink was the magic of alcohol for this guy. All of a sudden, the weight just fell off my shoulders, took a big, deep breath. It was like I'd been holding my breath all those years. And so we kept drinking. And after another couple of drinks, I'm looking at these guys and I'm thinking, these guys are really lucky I'm here. And all of a sudden it was like a bridge between how I felt and how everybody else felt. It was like a bridge between me and the rest of the human race. And I know if you're in this, on this Hollywood Squares thing, you may have had a similar experience. But boy, what a great feeling. And I thought, man, let's go do something. So we went back into the dance, and we go in there, and there's this one guy, huge guy, used to chase me around. And if he caught me, he'd thump me, but I was quick. I was the second fastest guy in my school. And he's standing there by the door, and he's looking at me, and I looked at him, and I said, what are you looking at? Just like that. And he goes, what? Because he wasn't used to me talking like that. And I go, you heard me. What are you looking at? And he goes, nothing. He didn't know what to say. He was kind of stunned. And it wasn't that I wasn't delusional. I didn't think I could beat this guy up, but I was not afraid of him. That was the magic of alcohol. I was not afraid of that guy. He could have beat me to death. Oh man, I didn't care. It didn't matter. What a powerful thing alcohol is. Alcohol gets a bad rap, but alcohol is an amazing drug. I think alcohol saved my life, because I think if I had to go through high school the way I felt before I took that drink, I don't think I would have made it through high school. I think I would have taken myself out. But man, that one did it for me. So, I went into the dance and asked a girl to dance. And I got pretty good at that girl thing. And I did 6 years in high school because of it, because I got a junior pregnant when I was a senior, and we didn't have any baby mamas back then. So you married them, and we got married. And a year later, we realized we were just babies ourselves, and we got divorced. And I went back to high school as a divorcee, paying child support. Finished up my high school. It wasn't that rare at Rancho. I think we had daycare. But got out of high school, got in trouble with the law, and the military, Vietnam was going on. And they said, if you join the military, we'll make that go away. And I did. Married another girl. I kept getting married. I interview well. So I get a girl. If you have what I want, you might as well give it up, because I'm just going to be wonderful till you do. And so they had this, married another girl, went in the army, came back, became a dice dealer. What a great job for an alcoholic. And a dice dealer, that's a super job for an alcoholic. We were drunk, the players were drunk, the bosses were drunk, everybody was drunk. If you weren't drunk, they thought you were stealing. And I never once got accused of stealing the whole time I was in that business. And we made a lot of money. So you had all this cash in your pocket at the end of the day, and you could behave how you wanted to, but I kept getting married. So I'd get married, and I had this whole different life going on the side that they didn't know about. So consequently, I got 4 divorces behind me. So why did I get sober? Well, if alcohol still worked, I'd still be doing it. Absolutely. But I just overshot the mark. I was starting to do weird things. I would call in sick. I called in sick on my day off once. And then my boss let me explain how sick I was before he mentioned that I was actually my day off. But I was just doing weird stuff like that. I went over to some people's house. We were getting ready to go out to the disco, and we went over there. And first time I ever met this couple, and I said, "Excuse me, I need to use the bathroom." That was my first move. And I went into the bathroom, and I turned the water on so they couldn't hear anything, and I would open the medicine chest, and then I would see, because sometimes there's expired drugs in there, and they're dangerous. So, and there was a bunch of expired drugs, so I ate them. And then I came back out, and just a minute ago I was normal. Now I'm drinking this Scotch whiskey, and then all of a sudden, my tongue's stapled to my molar, and I can't talk, and I need to go to the bathroom again. So I told her I still need to go back to the bathroom. So I went back to the bathroom, and I'm throwing up in this toilet. It was just, and they could hear me, outside, and I'm in there, and my head's in this toilet. and there's these unsightly rust stains in this toilet. And I can remember thinking to myself, what a pig this woman is, that she can't even spend a few dollars to get a little blue thing so that this toilet would look better. My head's in her toilet. And that's how I'm thinking. And that's what that's what my brain was when I got here. So I had to get sober. And not only that, my kids, I couldn't see my kids no more. I had all these kids by all these wives. I kept making stepchildren for somebody else to raise. And I was no longer allowed to see my kids on holidays. So I'd lost that right. My ex-wives all got together and they said, you don't tell them you're coming for birthdays and don't tell them you're coming for Christmas, because you break their hearts every time. You say, I'm going to come see you, and you leave them at the glass looking for dad, waiting for dad, and we're not going to put it up with anymore. So they just cut me off. I was no longer allowed to have my kids on Christmas, Thanksgiving, birthdays, any of those functions. But I convinced them I was going to be sober December of 1978. So I joined A&A on December 11th, and I managed to stay sober till Christmas Eve. And I convinced them to bring my kids over. Christmas Eve, I took a shot of whiskey, Scotch whiskey, to take the edge off, and I blacked out until May. I don't know nothing. I don't know what happened between Christmas Eve and May, but I know I didn't get to see a couple of my kids for 8 years after that. So it was getting serious now. So I came back into AA in May of 79, and I was determined I was going to make it. And I made it all the way till my birthday, November 19th of 79. And I went to a friend of mine's house, and he was my Army buddy. And we were sharing. He says, let's celebrate your birthday. And we celebrated with some wine. And I didn't think anything of it. I was coming up on 6 months sober. And he said, would you like some wine? And I didn't even hear, would you like a drink? I heard, would you like some wine? And to me, wine is not a drink. See, wine is bong water. That's what wine is. Wine is, the kind you twist off, that's wine. But this is like the stuff where you pull the cork out and swish it around and see what it smells like. That's, Jesus. So he pours me a half a glass, and I think it's okay because it's a half a glass. You said the first drink gets you drunk, and it's wine, which ain't even a drink, and I drank it. And wow, man, it hit my fingertips, and oh man, I wanted to finish the job. So I left there. I got a bottle of Chivas Regal, got in a car wreck, chased it with a couple of felonies, got locked out of the house, lost my job. I lost everything I owned in 12 hours. And I can tell you that that's the best thing that ever happened to this guy, because I sponsor a lot of guys, and they get sober, and they go out and they drink and they get sober, and then after a while, they get a few gifts of AA and they go out and drink again. But nothing too bad happens to them. So they know how to get sober again. And they go to another house, another halfway house, another drying out farm. They get sober again. They do it over and over and over again. And that's what my dad did. But with me, I lost everything I owned in 12 hours. And I was over. I was fully convinced. I really believe that there's two skill sets around here. And one is getting sober. And a lot of people know how to get sober. Clancy used to say, you want to get sober, just go punch a cop. You get sober. But staying sober, I could get sober. I couldn't stay sober. But that time when I came in, when that happened to me, that was it. It was all over for me. I was militantly sober. I'm in Las Vegas. I got me a sponsor. His name was Dick Toussaint. And he was a little old guy, and he would take me around to meetings. He liked going to this one meeting. It was full of old timers. And I didn't like old timers. I don't know if any of you that are new here, but old timers, they're not that likable at first. I was new, and I was 31 years old. And I was making a bunch of money, and I meet this old guy, and he's like, if you want what we have, it's like, and I didn't. I had no desire. And he'd say, how you doing, kid? And I said, well, I can't make the rent. And, I'm not sure about my wife and the neighbor. And he'd go, well, you got one of these books, get this book here. So keep coming back. And like the stuff they said didn't make any sense. And it still doesn't make much sense when you think about it. Well, how would doing those things fix those things? I truly love Alcoholics Anonymous. I think it's the most amazing thing that's ever happened, at least for me. And what I really love about it is not a thinking deal. It's not like I come in here and I learn some stuff and I think about it And then by doing that, my life gets better. It's just, there's no thinking. Thinking is not an asset. I thought it was when I got here. It's not. I go to these meetings and he'd say, well, how do you like these guys? And I said, I really don't like them, these old timers. And he said, well, don't worry about it. With that kind of attitude, you're not going to be one anyway. So you're safe. But he told me that if I knew how to get sober, he said, you're one of those guys. You know how to get sober. You've been sober 3 times this year. But if you want to learn how to stay sober, these are the guys that know that. And when I look at Tom, I mean, since 1955, and we got several guys in my group got sober in the 60s. So they know how to stay sober. And that's what I needed to learn, how to stay sober. And not only that, how to be happy about it. So I'm looking around the rooms and he says, you can build yourself in this room. Just look around the room and pick out what you like and you can adopt it. You can steal it and you can make the kind of person you want to be. So that's what I started doing. I would look around the room and I would see guys that are 20 years sober and they're just really sober. And I would watch what they did and I would avoid it. And then I would look at guys that were just, you could see their eyes matched the way they talked. They were just so happy. They were genuinely happy. They were looking right at you. And I wanted what they had. So I would watch what they did and I would do it. And if it fit, I would keep it. And if it didn't, I wouldn't. So the guy you're looking at in front of you right now is built in Alcoholics Anonymous. I built it right in these rooms. So I get sober in Las Vegas and things are going pretty good. I got me a job in the casino. I became a pit boss. I only had 6 months sober and I had a chance to go to Idaho to be an underground miner and have a piece of the action in this mining operation. And I went to my sponsor and I figured what he was going to do was say, no, you only got 6 months. So, no big changes in the first year and all that. And instead he said, do you know anybody in Idaho? And I said, no, I don't. He said, you should go to Idaho because everybody I knew in Las Vegas, they were party people. They were people I partied with. He said, you go to Idaho, see how that works. So I went to Idaho and I had clothes like this. So I had to all of a sudden become an underground miner. I had to go to Kmart, buy an outfit and I gave all my suits away to the homeless and got in my white on white Lincoln and drove up to a little town called Cary, Idaho. And before I went up there, my sponsor we called Twin Falls, Idaho, and got a contact in this little town, which is amazing. There's only 100 people in this town. And he says, there's a guy there. So I get moved in and everything. And then I get the address and I go over and knock on the door and he won't let me in at first. And eventually he does, but he lets me know that he has a gun. And so I can't figure out what's wrong. I said, you're a friend of Bill W. Twin Falls told me you're the guy. And he said, yeah. Turns out he had gotten in trouble with a mob girl here in Vegas. And he thought there was a hit out on him. And I show up in a white on white Lincoln from Las Vegas knocking on his door. And so he never talked to me unless he was armed. And he was the only other AA in town. So I'm thinking, well, this is great. So I called up my sponsor and I told him what happened. He said, well, there's a meeting in Ketchum, Idaho. And he gave me the address. So I drive 44 miles to Ketchum, Idaho. And I come into this room and there's a little, the white tables we got in all the rooms, there was one table like that in the room. There was one guy sitting there and he was listening to a Clancy tape and he had a pot of coffee and the literature. And that was just it. That was it. And I went in and he goes, are you an alcoholic? I go, yeah. He says, great. So he shuts the tape off and we sit down and, well, we had an hour. So we had to limit our talk to 30 minutes each. So he talked first. He had a really great story. And then I talked. So inadvertently, I'd mentioned that I'd smoked some pot in high school. Now, I am not a warrior for pot. Let me tell you, I didn't like pot. It made me stupid, paranoid, and hungry. That's all it did to me. I only used it as part of the interviewing process with girls. But as soon as I said that, he goes, hold it right there, buddy. We don't talk about that in here. And I'm looking around, and it's just him and I. There's only 2 of us. So, but he really didn't like me. And I understand that. I'm a little happy for some people. And that's okay. If everybody if you like everybody and everybody likes you, you're not going to nearly enough meetings. I can tell you that. But he was a little more serious, and I know he didn't like me because he started another meeting in Sun Valley and he never told me about it. So But he did have 5 cassette tapes. He had these 5 cassette tapes, and he said, listen, why don't you listen to these? And so I took them, and it was Sybil Corwin, Chuck Chamberlain, Clancy, Johnny Harris, and Norm Alpey. And those were the cassettes that I took, and everywhere is a long way from anywhere in Idaho. And everywhere I went, I would listen to these tapes over and over and over and over again, and I would listen to them. And they did not treat this lightly. You know, they did not treat Alcoholics Anonymous lightly. They talked the way that I hope that I'm sharing. I said, I don't want to give you any false impressions. I want you to understand that what is Alcohol Anonymous has done for this guy, what it's done for me, it can do for anybody. So I listened to those over and over and over again, and that was really my foundation in Alcoholics Anonymous. And so I'm in a mining camp in Idaho. And before that happened, I was reading the grapevine, and I would read one article at a time so I could stretch it out for the whole month. And I would read the stories in the back of the book, and I would read only one story at a time, maybe a half a story, because that was pretty much my AA. But these cassette tapes became my AA, and I stayed sober. And I got rich. I don't know if the tapes had anything to do with that, but we made some dough. And me being a poor kid, the first thing I did was buy a plane. I had to get a plane right away. You need all the essentials. I got this little airplane, and I'm flying it around the meetings, and I would make sure that you knew I flew it to the meeting. I would come to the meeting with 3 years sober and say, I'm Charlie Hill, I'm an alcoholic, and I flew here in my own airplane. And if you want what I have, just do what I do. And I was not, I was a joy to the old timers. And the reality was that that's just the mining business. The mining business is like that. So 2 years later, I had lost all the money. We went broke. And I know that I treat money that way because of my childhood. Being so poor when I was a kid, I have trouble. If I have some money, you're going to know about it. I'm going to wear it. I'm going to drive it, and I'm going to peel that dollar bill off of the roll of it in the meeting. And I know that. And so I don't know, there's worse things, I guess. But so I limped out of town. On the way out of town, we lost all the money, and I limped out of town. I asked another girl to marry me just to prove she would like me. And I went to Reno. And in Reno, Nevada, my whole program changed. It's this time we're at 5 years, coming up on 5 years sober. I'm in Reno, Nevada. I've done the steps with a sponsor in Idaho named Gail, who's still alive and going to come visit me here in another month, to the best of my ability. And so that was the second time I had done the steps. I did them with Dick. And then I get to Reno, and I started doing some things I shouldn't do. And I know that in a meeting this side, there's probably kids hanging out. So I kind of temper the story I'm about to tell you, but I can tell you that I was cheating on my wife and with several people. And of course, if you're new, this is a long time ago, I was much more marketable product, and I had a lot more energy, but it was something that I thought was so great, but in reality, it was very painful because I couldn't tell the truth in meetings, and I was getting close to having a drink. And I ran into this guy named Dave Hamza. Dave Hamza was a member of the Pacific Group. He was a heavyweight boxer. He fought Ezzard Charles when Ezzard Charles was a heavyweight champion of the world. And he went the distance in an exhibition fight. So I used to have short arguments with Dave. I would argue with Dave on the phone. I never argued in person. But he comes up to me and he starts talking to me. And he says, what's your name? He didn't even know my name. And I told him, he says, I think you're in trouble. And the first time I met the guy, and he's like this far from me. He says, I think you're in trouble. And the next day I looked him, I went and found him because I wanted to know, how did he know that? And he was just an old timer who could see in my eyes. He could see, he could see me by looking in my eyes. And I was in such pain. And I had good outsides, but I was in some serious pain. And so the next day I started talking to him. He said, let's go get some coffee. And we went and got some coffee in a coffee shop. And he's asked me what's going on. And at the time I had a sponsor, but it was a sponsor in name only. It was a guy, I knew what hours he worked, and I would call him when he was at work and leave messages telling him I was okay. But we didn't do any steps or do any books or anything like that. So Dave's talking to me and he says, well, tell me what's going on. And I told him about these 6 people. And he said, I think you're in trouble, and you want me to sponsor you? And I go, yeah. He said, well, then ask me. So I said, will you sponsor me? And he says, are you willing to go to any length to beat alcohol? I said, yes. Can you follow simple direction? I said, yes. He says, okay. He says, let's talk about this. And what we did finally was he determined that I needed to tell him all the truth. And I said, okay, I'll do that. And he said, I want you to tell him all the truth today, or get another sponsor. And I was so afraid of drinking because just 2 days before that, I had a glass of champagne right here. And I almost drank it, but I saw myself in a mirror and dropped it. And I was so afraid of that I said, okay, I'll do it. And I looked in the book. There's some stuff in the book there. I shouldn't have had to do that. It says right in there, except to do so and injure them or others. And and the 12:12 says you can't get sober at somebody else's expense. And he said, no, you're not having an affair. You're exhibiting serial behavior. And these women deserve to know what they're dealing with. And so you need to tell them the truth and see what happens for the first time in your life. So I told them all the truth in very short sentences. And it was the longest day of my life, I can tell you that. At the end of the day, I had no more relationship problems. They all told me to take a hike except one. And the last person that I went to talk to, I was so tired, I stayed. And I'm still with her. I've been with this woman for 37 years. So here's what happened in AA. By just a simple thing of just to telling the truth and listening to a sponsor. I'm with Irene now. I've been with her for 37 years. She's the love of my life. And she gets the absolute truth about what's going on. I don't wonder what she's doing because I'm not doing nothing. She asked me where I've been. I just tell her where I've been. I learned a whole new way of living because of what Dave had me do. He had me stay with her, and he said, just tell her the truth. He says, you either got a relationship or you don't. And we did. And then, oddly enough, she got sober. How about that, huh? When I was with her, I didn't know she was alcoholic. In fact, I thought she wasn't because she had a bottle of wine in her refrigerator and it never went down. Turns out she didn't like wine. So I'm with her for 3 years, and all of a sudden she's been sober 33 years, and we've been together 37 this year. So, but about 3 years into the deal, she starts going to meetings, and we didn't go to meetings together. She went to her meetings, I went to mine. We kept it separate, and she stayed sober this whole time. You know what a miracle that is? First thing, it's a miracle anybody gets sober. It's another miracle two people get together. And it's another miracle when both of them stay sober. I am just a lucky guy. Also, what I figured out is I think alcoholism might be a sexually transmitted disease because when I met her, she was an alcoholic. So there's just a possibility it might be a case anyway. But we have had a great time. We get sober. I got sober in Vegas, and now I did this big loop. Now I'm in Reno. I got into a business. We made a bunch of money, and I bought a boat, and then we lost it all. And then so we limped out of town and went to Auburn, California, her and I. And we go to this town in Auburn. She had a year sober, and I had more than that. And we're going to meetings, and they don't do them right. If anybody here has moved somewhere, you know what I'm talking about. You go there, and they don't do the meetings right. They didn't do the meetings like they did where we came from. They clapped. They clapped at everything. Hi, I'm Bob. They clapped at everything. And I don't know, they just did it wrong. So I was trying to stay sober, hanging on to my sponsor back in Reno and talking to them. And he said that what I needed, the problem that I had was that I had gone to Auburn where they had a big fellowship like this. And I was leaning on their fellowship. He said, your fellowship isn't here yet. What do you mean? He says, well, they're not in their rooms yet. He said, your fellowship is still drinking, or they haven't moved there yet. And what you need is a fellowship to grow up around you. And if you get the knack for that, you can go anywhere on the planet. And so how do I do that? He says, well, I want you to remember people's names. And when the newcomer introduces himself, just remember their name. And then go up afterwards and say, hi, Steve, I'm glad you're here, and I hope to see you at another meeting. That's the whole pitch. Hi, Anthony, I'm glad you're here, and I hope to see you at another meeting. Hi, Jim, I'm glad you're here, and I hope to see you at another meeting. That was the whole pitch. And he said, what'll happen is that guy will look for you at the next meeting. See, what I was doing is I was going up and saying, hi, I'm Charlie. And what does that mean? He just met 10 other guys. He can't remember their names either. And suddenly my name is going to be the one that I'm going to make him sober. And he said, if you remember their name, they will look for you. And sure enough, some of these guys started looking for me the following week. And then I'd take them around and introduce them. And then maybe would have coffee. And then all of a sudden I'm sponsoring guys. And a fellowship grew up around me. It was quite an experience. We were in Auburn for about 4.5 years. And Irene and I, we were so broke. Well, I got in so much trouble in Reno with that business that we didn't have a dollar to put in the basket, literally. So I'm real cautious when people say, well, what's your sobriety worth to you when you're watching the basket go by? Because we were there, and for the first 2 years, we could not put a dollar in the basket. We had $6 a day to live on. And we had Irene and I, her son Joe, and a St. Bernard. So now if both of us go to a meeting and we each give $1, now we got $4 to live on. And it just doesn't pencil. We used to mark on the calendar when we ran out of money. And then we would hawk something or sell something. And that happened. It was a tough time. So by the same token, if I'm sponsoring somebody and they got a $6 energy drink in front of them and they're smoking a pack of cigarettes and they let the basket go by, I might say something to them. But that wasn't the case with us. So after we were there for a long time, we were just so broke. Now I'm sponsoring guys, and you know how that goes. You sponsor guys, and they get a host of friends, and they start with jobs, and they make money, and they're going on vacation. So these guys are going on vacation, and Irene and I really wanted to go on vacation, but we didn't have any money. So one night we're sitting there, and she says, you know, we have terrible jobs here. She said, why don't we just move to a beautiful place and get a terrible job there? It was like genius. So that's what we decided to do. We made a conscious decision that number one thing to do for us both, we both have the same theory, not drink no matter what. And everything, the important things that I do are go to meetings, phone, sponsorship, the big book, prayer, etc. All the things I do that allow me to stay sober. After that, it's everything that's interesting. And the thing that was causing us pain was something from the interesting file. Money, where we live, things like that. So we had a guy that was in Sedona, Arizona, and he had sent us a postcard, and it was a beautiful place. And when he gets back, I said, is it really that pretty? And he said, it's so pretty, make your eyes water. So we said, okay, let's do this. Let's do it. We decided we were going to move to beautiful places, just get terrible jobs, find a meeting, a place to live, and a job, maybe in that order, and become part of the community, and get a fellowship to grow up around us there, and live there for about 3.5 years, and then find another beautiful place and go move there. And that's what we've done. So we go to Sedona, first place we went to. And we got there, and it was like, we did the same thing. We're going like, they don't do it right here. You know, they're not doing it like they did it back where we just came from. First thing, we didn't have a posse with us. Nobody was asking us to sponsor them. They didn't care what we said. And they certainly didn't care how we did things in California. And so, and I called my sponsor, and he says, you have a forgetter. He says, you go to meetings, you remember the new guy's name, call them by name, look for the visitors, talk to the visitors, and get a fellowship to grow up around you. And we did that. We stayed in Sedona for about 3.5 years. One day we were on vacation in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. So we took one look around and said, wow, this is great. We asked our son if he was okay with it. He said, yes. So we moved to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. What a place. And it was what a great program there too. We had a little group called the Hacienda Group, and we met in the upstairs hotel in Hacienda Hotel in Cabo San Lucas. And our service there was when somebody came to town that wanted a meeting, we would go around to the hotels, the resorts, and we would say, listen, if somebody's looking for a meeting, they speak English, give them this number. And then they call you, and instead of giving them directions, you say, I'll pick you up in front of your resort at such and such a time. I mean, we would take them to the meetings, and then we would take them to tacos afterwards, and we would take them back to the resort. And I made so many friends that way and wound up sponsoring guys that way. From there, we went to Redmond Sisters, Oregon. I don't know if you know where that is, but Bend, Oregon, it's a pretty place. I just went up there on a little business trip and It was snow-capped mountains from horizon to horizon. So we moved there, a little town of 5,000, Redmond. Pretty big now. And the same thing happened. You know, they didn't do it right. So we did the same way. We talked to newcomers and visitors and got a fellowship to grow up around us. And from there, on a cold winter day, we went to Boca Raton, Florida, and driving up Highway 1 in our rented convertible. And there was a sign that said apartment for rent, just obviously God's will, put that sign right out there where we could see it. So we went in there and we rented the apartment. And we moved to Boca Raton, Florida, lived there for about 5 years. Great experience. And then from there, we went back to Cabo San Lucas, and I got a job offer there. I made so much money in a year, I haven't worked since. That was in 2005. I haven't done an honest day's work since. And from there, we retired in Todos Santos, Mexico, which is a really cool place. Like Todos Santos, Mexico, there were 5 people in the program when we got there. And Irene and I came to town, and so we made 7. So we like almost, you know, that's a big chunk. It was 40% of the program there. And the funny thing was, 2 people didn't like us. It don't matter where you go. That's just how this thing works, you know. And our thing there was visitors. Visitors in Todos Santos and Cabo San Lucas are on slippery ground. So our job was to make sure that we got them connected with people in the program. And hopefully they get back home without having to change their sobriety date. So we're in Todos Santos. We're retired. We're building a house on the beach. My mom calls me up and says, your sister is sick and she has a week to live. My sister 12-stepped me into the program. And so I said, we'll come up, we'll come up. So we jump in the expedition and we drive up to Vegas. And my sister, she did it. The first thing she ever did on time. She died in a week. She died on December 4th of 2007. And while she was busy dying, my stepdad, who my mom married and lived with for 34 years, he went to the hospital for some minor thing with his lungs, and he got the MRSA, the super virus, and he died on the 20th of December. So so that was her whole family except for me. And we're there, and here's my little 82-year-old deaf mom. She just buried her husband and her daughter. And we stayed. So we stayed. So what we've been doing since 2007, is a living amends. We've been taking care of my mom. We got us a big house here with 2 levels, and she lives on one, we live on the other. She has stage 4 dementia now. She'll be 95 in a couple of weeks, and we take care of her. And so it's a living amends. And we did the same thing here. We came here and we didn't like the meetings, even though I got sober here. they changed them while I was gone. And we come back and we go to meetings. We went to a morning meeting. This is why I keep saying that frequent contact with newcomers and each other is the bright spot of our lives. And my big pitch is it's newcomers and visitors, because they didn't say visitors in the book, but that's because there weren't any really. But now there are. And a lot of times when people come to beautiful places, and we assume that they're there for some kind of vacation-y thing, and that's not always the case. When Irene and I came up from Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, the morning meeting, they say, any visitors? Yes, Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. And a lot of people mentioned that we were from Mexico and said some things, but nobody called on us. But more importantly, after the meeting, nobody came up and said, why are you here? Why are you here? Because they just assumed we were in Vegas for something vacation. And we were in Vegas to bury my sister and my stepdad. We were burying half my family. But nobody asked. And I got to thinking about that. And I wondered how many people show up in Vegas, and the first thing we think of is they're here for some fun bachelor party, something like that. And it's not always the case. A lot of times they come here and they're here to put their parents' stuff away or to put their parents away. Who knows? So I made a good point, and the guys that I sponsor, that's what I want to see. I don't want anybody taking an Uber back to their hotel. If somebody comes to a meeting, the first thing I do is I go up and if I don't know your name, Stephen, I'll go, hey, hey, Tennessee, how you doing? What brings you here? And ask them why they're here. And then and if they're going to stay here, to get them tucked in, because people come here, they don't like the meetings. Now they try to stay sober, talking to their sponsors back home. And wow, we get a lot of them here that blow off 10, 20, 30 years sober because they didn't like the meetings. They went home, they tried to do it alone because they got some time. And I really take that pretty seriously. In fact, there's a couple of guys out here that I sponsor, and they were all visitors in Las Vegas. And I sized right into them. So that's my big pitch. That's my soapbox. I'll get off that. I'll tell you what, this Alcoholics Anonymous is a wonderful, 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 wonderful thing. Everything I have that's good or decent, I owe to Alcoholics Anonymous. You've given me my life. You just, I've got 4 kids. Well, 3 of them are talking to me now. I got 11 grandkids, and all of those are talking to me. So that life is good. I got, I'm taking my mom on her 95th birthday. We're going to go take her to Texas, to Kyle, Texas, and she's going to see her great-great-grandchildren. Her granddaughter has grandchildren, and we're going to take her there while she can still remember and meet her great-great-grandchildren. It's going to take a month to drive there because she can't fly, and stay in places, and then stay there and drive back. And it's a living amends. And I still haven't leveled the scales. I love each and every one of you. There's nothing you can do about that. I love you all. There's no way. If you're new and they keep saying you have to repay AA, let me tell you, it's a big ripoff, because what happens is when you try to pay back AA, so you'll do something for AA, you'll wind up getting more than you gave. So you're just going further in the hole. So, you just, get out now. I mean, every time I try to do something and pay something back, I get more back. I love each and every one of you. And what that means is I don't like everybody in AA. If you do, you don't go to enough meetings, but I love each and every one of you. And what that means is, even if you're maybe a little stiff, if you called me up and said, Charlie, I'm thinking about drinking, I would absolutely go get some coffee with you and talk to you. And I think even if I'm a little too cheerful for some of you, that if I called you up and said, hey, Anthony, I'm thinking about drinking, that you would absolutely be there. And that's what I mean by I love you. So thank you for letting me share.